Well, hello. My name is Andrew. I'm just kidding. Hi, guys.
Trading places today.
Yeah, well, we switched up sides, too, so it's really throwing me.
true.
But anyways, guys, welcome back to Imagine That. Unfortunately, we are not the pretty faces of Rick and Tim, but instead, I'm Zach.
I'm Andrew.
And today, we are going to be your hosts for what we're kind of dubbing, it's almost like a game show. It's AI versus human.
This is true. And we're going to see how does it stack and line up for, AI-generated itineraries and travel to, planning to what we do as a tour operator and kind of comparing, see if there's anything in that that's good or not good. So.
Yeah, it's been a bit of a weird debate. So I think we get a phone call at least once a week. And I don't say this, I'm not lashing out at anyone, but usually people call and they ask, so what is it that you guys actually do? Like, obviously, we put together the tours, but people always ask us, what is it that you do at your office behind the scenes? And usually we go into pretty good detail. We say, we contact the overseas partners, we arrange your flights with the airlines, we do all this stuff, but sometimes that doesn't really translate well. And so when we were talking about our subject this week, I was actually talking about it with Tim and Rick, and they were like, what about if we explained how a tour operator works? And then someone threw out the idea of like, well, could AI do it better? And I wanted to put that to the test.
Yeah.
So
it's a good challenge for sure.
I feel like this is probably a little bait and switch because I feel like I could have given AI an upper hand. And so I didn't not give it the upper hand, but there's definitely more that I could have done. But I think the looming issue is like AI is a really good tool, but it's not there yet, or maybe that's kind of like reaching too far ahead.
Yeah, definitely within its first early stages, and I mean everyone's getting used to it. I mean, we even talked today about there's Instagram has their own to Meta with Facebook. I mean, there's so many different versions of it as well.
Yeah, and each one of them seems to offer something just slightly different. So like you said with Meta, like I know that you have sent me like hockey memes before using like the Meta AI. And then I know that Caleb in our office has sent me other stuff. Like there's some new generative image AI that he's used and he loves it. I personally, I've only had experience with ChatGPT and Gemini. So it's like, I feel like I haven't tried everything else yet, but as you and I had discussed before this, there's even stuff to like correct your grammar to help you write novels. There's therapeutic AIs that I saw after this. Like you can have an AI chatbot, which is kind of like a therapist, so you can tell it your issues. I feel like I might need to check into that after the stream.
Very interesting.
But yeah,
so
it's wild.
There's a lot out there. So we're going to kind of go through like how can it help, or where is it really lacking within the travel sphere, I guess.
Yeah, because that's a good question. So at some point today, we will talk about, we have obviously our handcrafted itineraries that we've really focused on, and it's kind of our specialty. Like when you book a trip with us, whether you're a group leader or a passenger, we kind of manage all the heavy work for you. If you sign up as a passenger, your responsibilities really are to show up at the airport, make sure that you don't leave your luggage at home, make sure that someone is watching your cat or dog, that way they're not unattended.
Have your passport.
Have your passport.
That's a big one.
Have a sitter for the kids if they're not coming with you. Like relatively simple things. But really, we do all of the heavy legwork. We arrange your flights if that's the route that you go. We arrange your hotels. We prepay your gratuities. We do everything. And so that's kind of where like the debate stemmed from is that something that AI can even do, and maybe what are some of the limitations? So I think what it comes down to, and the first point I want to talk about is like setting up like your prompts, your templates, like what do those look like? So I mean, where would I even start? So if I wanted to book a trip, how would I even do that with AI compared to like what we do?
Yeah, and the thing with AI is it works off of what's prompted. So you have to give it the information. You have to give it the legwork and the generality of here's where we want to go, here's what we want to visit. Yeah, I would say, in using an AI, like what is your favorite? What have you used before? I know for you mentioned ChatGPT. That's pretty much the only thing I've used before when it comes to writing anything.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably my go-to favorite. I started with Gemini because it was free, and then ChatGPT obviously has their free version. I'm willing to say that I, as well as several people that work here, probably pay for some variation of ChatGPT for like something. And honestly, it's so useful with just everyday tasks. Like, if I have an idea and I'm like, how do I frame this better? It can do that. But I've realized the biggest shortcoming, and that's probably where you were leading, is like, it's only as good as the prompt. And so like if you don't properly prompt the bot or the AI, it won't give you what you're expecting. So you can say, hey, I want to go to Israel for 10 days. I want to stay at, really nice deluxe hotels. And, I want a good Christian guide, and I want tipping prepaid. I want a bus. But if you don't specify, how close do you want to be to the old city when you're in Jerusalem? Or, what cruise line do you prefer to go on if you're doing a Greece tour? Like, I asked it at one point, I said, hey, give me some Greek cruise line ideas. And it's like, well, what's your budget? And it's like, oh, that is a pretty good question. So you really need to focus on, what and then feed it that information.
Yeah, and then going off of that is you may never have been to Israel before, so you're kind of not really knowing what to ask. And, again, it only works off the prompts you give it. So if you've never been there, you don't know where things are, in proximity from the, the Western Wall to the Mount of Olives. I mean, there's all different things that are in between that you could end up missing or not have time for. And so whereas what we do with working with guides or working with our overseas office partners is really formatting these itineraries to really get the maximum of what you can see within a given day. And, so not to jump ahead, but just, looking at the comparison to what we do to what AI is capable of for sure, but it's also limited.
Yeah, and maybe we should jump ahead to this, because honestly, that poses a really good point of, so maybe this was probably not like the best way to go about it, but I asked ChatGPT, I said, hey, if I wanted to go to Israel in May of 2026, I want to go for 10 days, which is our standard. I want to have a couple nights in the Galilee area, a couple nights in Jerusalem, and I want to have one night in like the Tel Aviv, Netanya area. What does an itinerary look like? And what I did is I said, here are 10 sites that are must-have sites, and then suggest things that are similar. And on this little piece of paper, it did half.
Yeah.
I would say it did half.
It was a good first
comfortably.
try.
Yeah. And so this kind of goes with like that whole saying, like, garbage in, garbage out. So like if you don't feed it enough information, then it doesn't know what you're looking for. So like I said, for example, one of the spots was like the Nof Guinnessar Boat Museum. That to me is a must visit, going and seeing the Jesus boat and then actually going and riding the boat. Huge.
Agreed.
Then another thing that I'd mention is, if I'm in the Jerusalem area, I want to be within walking distance of the old city. The issue, though, is I didn't actually specify what walking distance was. So some of the hotels it gave me are like 5 minutes away. Some of them are like 35 minutes away. Personally speaking, if I've had a full meal, I don't want to walk 35 minutes into the old city after doing 3 to 5 miles of walking in a day.
Yeah, especially if you want to do like the Western Wall tunnels in the evening, and then you're walking to the old city, and in addition, you're also going downstairs and you're walking long distances even doing that.
And it's funny you mentioned the Western Wall tunnels. As I'm looking through this, there's no mention of it at all. I mentioned seeing the old city, but that's it. Like it didn't say anything about the Western Wall, the tunnels.
And this is one of the great things about, the pastors or the trip leaders that we work with as hosts. When they're putting these together, they're really customizing and formatting these to really fit, what they want to teach and what they want to share with people while they're on the trip. And again, including things like the Western Wall tunnels, and including those things that, it may be left off of a trip if you've never been there before. And so when we're working in turn with these hosts that, even if they've never been before, but just starting out from what we have put together, they give their input on things of, hey, what would you recommend while we're in the old city, or while in the evenings, or what should we do? And that's really what keys into, what we do with, the relationships we have with our guides and our office partners. And, hey, what's some things that, maybe we haven't thought of that we could put together for people.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I know that they probably can't see this, but here's the sheet. It's an itinerary. All it has is an itinerary and hotels. I said, recommend me a guide, recommend me a driver, like a driving company, even if it's a private charter. I don't have any of that. And that's the thing is, it's only as good as the prompt. And so, as we're sitting here, you're talking about we have relationships with these people. We have relationships with your group leaders, and none of this is conveyed. So it's one of those things, the concept is here, there's an idea here, there's obviously a layout of, there's a flow. There's day 1 through 10, it says the day of the week, it says, the first couple days will be in the Mediterranean area, then the next couple of days in Gali. That follows our pattern for the most part. But there's nothing personable about it. I mean, there's nothing that says, oh, the pastor specifically asked for this, and this. It didn't give any of that because I didn't prompt it to. Yeah. But that's the thing is, unless someone knows that they're supposed to prompt it to do this, I don't know that it will. So it's weird. We've kind of built these relationships with people that I don't know that AI has yet. Like I joked about the AI therapist. It's great in theory, I think, but until it knows you, how many sessions would you have to complete? And do I schedule a session? Do I just sit down at my computer and start typing and that's it? It doesn't work. And then the other thing is like some of the sites, like the Garden of Gethsemane, for example, that's closed to most groups. It's only for Catholic groups. But we get most of our groups there because we have a relationship with the garden owners, with the garden operators. And because of that relationship, we're able to actually get our groups in there so that they can have time for private devotionals, prayers, even worship, as you and I have both seen on trips. But AI doesn't have that. So it may tell me, hey, these are the hours that the garden is open, but it doesn't have that relationship that you and I do with our friends over there.
And it really comes back to that personal touch, I think, is what's really needed. And even, I think, Rick and Amy were kind of talking about that last week on the last live stream about, when people call our office, you're getting to talk to a person. We're getting to, emails directly from, our operations representatives or our sales staff that's here, I'd imagine. So that's really what we're about, is because, we work directly with you and with your host, and putting these trips together to really make it that personal touch, and also a very memorable experience is what we're highly seeking after, for sure.
Absolutely. And not all of this is to say that AI is bad by any means, because there are useful ways to use us. I just don't think that booking your trip from the start is probably one of them. Like I can foresee traveling there with either my wife or you going with your wife and saying, what are some good spots to eat in the old city? Or, hey, here's my hotel. I am staying at the Dan. I know that obviously that's outside of like the city limit, so you probably want to take like a car, but like maybe the Dan Boutique or the Dan Panorama. Like what's within walking distance of me for good food? Or, a lot of our groups, we have free time. What are some good shops to see? Yeah. Obviously, I would much rather ask a guide, but if a guide's not available, say you booked all this yourself, then that is where I think AI could be beneficial. Obviously it's going to pull data from the internet. It'll pull it from Yelp and Expedia and Google reviews, but it doesn't have that relationship we keep talking about. And
agreed.
That's something else that I think you pride yourself in is, if someone calls, I can speak to you and I can bounce ideas off your head. I can bounce ideas off AI all day long, but it doesn't know what I'm thinking. Whereas if I have a conversation with you, you can be like, oh, I'm reading between the lines a little bit. And are you really trying to say this? Unless you spell it out, it doesn't know.
Yeah, and it's a great tool. I mean, I would even think about usages of it for, even putting together like a packing list. Like we provide a packing list just because we get questions all the time about that. We have that in our materials. But, again, it's putting in, your personal, what you like or what other people on the internet that may be, something you haven't thought of before, and you could even do it that way. It's one of these things that what is cool about it is that you can get ideas and then kind of edit it afterwards of like, hey, here's some great input, but it doesn't really fit what works for me best. And then you can keep going from there. So definitely some usages for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a really useful tool, but I don't think it's a replacement. So like, I did have someone ask me the question a couple weeks ago. They were like, well, why don't I just have AI do this for me instead of talking to you? And I'm like, you're welcome to. But I don't know that it's going to get you the answer that you want. And ultimately, they ended up circling back, and we were able to figure it out. But it's just, there's nothing there. We offer something more than a computer can. Now, granted, I say this, in 5 years, we might get replaced. We might be working for the computer overlords. I'm pretty sure there's like a movie trilogy about this.
Yeah, we got to be careful about that one.
Arnold something, I don't know. But it's wild. I mean, we work with guides, we have their expertise, their experience, like, and we ask them questions all the time. I know I do. I mean, I have several of them on speed dial where I'll text them on WhatsApp and I'll be like, hey, I have a group. They want to go to this site at this time. Do you think we can work it in? And they're like, no, we can't do it on this day, but we can do it on that day. And that's the other thing. Like, I think you'd mentioned earlier when we were talking about some of this is like, how do I know if a site is booked for like a private event? So like the Garden Tomb, for example, during Easter 2 years ago, I want to say, they completely closed it. And typically on Sundays, they're closed anyways. But they had reserved the Garden Tomb for a church that wanted to do communion and a time of, devotionals.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't know that on paper because ChatGPT doesn't know that. They don't know the Garden Tomb's calendar. I mean, that's only something that we would know because, we're picking up the phone and calling them. And that's not to say that a person that's building something themselves couldn't call, but they may not get an answer from them.
Yeah, and I mean, there's holidays even in like Greece and things where certain sites may be closed, during a point of the year, and it's all those kinds of things you take into account that you may not think about because you haven't been or you haven't visited or you haven't been there enough to know that, hey, it's just as you mentioned with the Garden Tomb being closed on Sunday, so we try to always work that around within the itinerary. If we have to shift days in the itinerary, whenever we're working with the host on building these trips, to really make sure that all the days work out. I know one of the first things I learned when I was here, for instance, at the Dead Sea, we're trying to do that on a Saturday because a lot of things can be closed in Jerusalem on a Saturday, or streets are closed, that kind of thing. So it really is one of those things that we recommend going to the Dead Sea on that Saturday just so you can kind of open up the rest of the itinerary to make it a little easier. So things like that. For sure.
And that's something that people get when they book with us, when they travel with us, is your experience. You just said you learned that. I'll be honest, I did not realize that until, just now.
And there are sites that, of course there are sites in Jerusalem you can still do all those kinds of things on a Saturday, but it's just one of those things that, if you can, it's a great way to do it.
And
for sure.
It makes perfect sense. Most people are celebrating Shabbat or observing Shabbat, so they're not actively doing things. Shops are closed, restaurants are closed. Whereas the Dead Sea is kind of like, it's not necessarily like the party town, because that's not what it is. But it's like
a resort town.
Yeah, it's the resorts. It's where people are going to vacation. If people want to stay home and they want to observe, they're welcome to. But if you want to go and relax and enjoy being served, that's where you can go to do it. And quite frankly, the Dead Sea is 2 hours away from most of our hotels. It's not far, so it would be like us going to Disney World for the weekend.
Yep.
So.
Not that I want to be on I-4 on a weekend, but...
No, I-4 on the weekend in Florida is miserable.
Very miserable.
That alone, Florida traffic could be a topic of interest. It's so bad. But
you can comment if you want us to talk about that more.
Yeah, if you do want to see Andrew and I talk about Florida traffic, let us know in the comments. But yeah, it's just, I do want to circle back to this itinerary a bit. And I think it's a really strong starting point. But there's no story here. It doesn't tell a cohesive story of okay, obviously day one says we depart from Newark for an overnight flight to Tel Aviv, and that's where, the trip starts. And then you arrive in Tel Aviv, and everything's great. You overnight in your hotel, and it gives you a basic outline. But it doesn't tell you why some of these sites are important. It doesn't tell you what happened here, were they related biblically. It just gives you kind of like a top-down view, like an aerial shot.
Agreed. Yeah.
But I'm also noticing we're missing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, and also, with, the scriptural references to the, again, as we work with hosts, we let people know that we can customize this even with the wording that they want to do, to really key in on what they're looking to teach while they're at the site, or what's biblically important to highlight. And so we even customize it just so that the wording even has that storytelling, and really pushes the spiritual aspect of and the biblical aspect of it, because with what we do and our main point of what we serve groups is for them to really experience this as a biblical tour, or have biblical emphasis in teaching like they do on river cruises and everything, to have those times with the group as a community and as a time of fellowship.
Yeah, and I fully agree. I feel like a great comparison for people to maybe understand is like this would be like going to Ephesus, buying your ticket, and then the guy at the gate telling you, all right, enjoy, and not telling you anything, not telling you why Ephesus is important, not telling you where to go, how to get down to the library. Like, obviously, I'm sure someone could figure it out, It's not complicated. There are signs, there's, plaques that are in English, but without knowing the context, most people that go on these trips, they're very familiar with the gospel, with the writings. Like, they understand why they're going to most of these places, but some of them, may not be so specific. Like, obviously, the Garden Tomb, that one makes sense. There's some people that believe the Church of the Holy Sepulchre is the, burial place of Christ. So it's one of the two. But then there's some of the stuff here like, okay, St. Peter and Gallicantu. It's included on this. I was surprised you actually pointed it out that it wasn't, or that it was. But outside of like a couple sites, I mean, most of this is like the really common run-of-the-mill stuff. And it's great because, obviously history happened here, but not everything happened at just these sites. For example, I'm looking at our time in the Galilee and we talk about Capernaum, we talk about the Mount of Beatitudes, Tabgha, but there's no mention of Hippos, Sasita. There's no mention of...
I don't even know if I saw Magdala in this one.
No, Chorazim. I mean, how many different synagogues did Jesus teach at that aren't here? Magdala, obviously. One of the suggestions actually is the Magdala Hotel, so maybe that's what they were getting at, but Magdala is such an important site. How could that be left off, especially when the prompt is, give me a list of sites that are, obviously impactful for my journey as a Christian and for me to see, like, this is a very slow-paced itinerary. I mean, there's maybe 2 or 3 sites a day. And on our normal trips, we're trying to hit, 5 to 7, which is even relatively relaxed. I have a tour host, you're very familiar with him, and he's got like 10 sites a day. And that's a little ambitious in my opinion, but he does it and it works. But this, I mean, by 2 o'clock, I'm gonna have the rest of the day to shop.
Yeah, and that's the thing of really maximizing the time that you have while in country is that, these are biblically based or, heavily, visited, sightseeing that you're doing because we want you to maximize that time while you're overseas. So that's why we let people know that, there's a lot of walking on our tours, there's a lot of stops within the day, but it's because you may only go once and you really want to experience it. And we want you to experience it and to not miss out. And I think one of the other important things too is that you can have that time together as a community, as a church even, or your group, where it's really just a bonding experience of getting to be together, learn at the sites, and it's not just, we just went and visited a couple sites, but there's so much more richness and deep time that you have in the Word and in Scripture to learn at so many sites that we visit, for sure.
No, I fully agree. And that's something that, I think that we pride ourselves on is, helping groups and helping congregations build that, being able to, establish a clear itinerary where you get to visit everything and then you get to experience something together as a group, whether, the group is as small as 12 people or if it's as big as like 6 buses. Whatever the size is, you're doing life with these people now, you're meeting someone in the church that you may not have otherwise met.
Exactly.
And not to say that someone couldn't do all this on their own with AI and, figure it out, but to go and spend the thousands, I mean, these trips, I think the cheapest one that I've seen lately is in like the mid 4,000s. If I'm going to spend $4,500, I want to see the most that I can see because like you said, I may not get to go back, whether it be life circumstances, financial, or just time. I mean, frankly, most people, this is a once in a lifetime opportunity.
Yeah.
If they get to go and see Israel and then Greece, they've won. I mean, that's everything. But some people, it's kind of like a one or the other situation. So I would hate for someone to miss out. And it's hard because like there are these real stories, we have these interactions with the guides that, our guides, we've vetted, we've established them. We know that they are good guides. Our drivers even, most of our drivers are Christian, which is great. But like, you're not going to get that if you book someone off Expedia because that's what Jim and I told you to do. They said, hey, this guy has a 4-star review. He's fantastic, but it doesn't convey, if he actually is fantastic and how was he rated? Was he rated because of his price? Was he rated because, the convenience of getting the guide or the driver? Or was it because he was personable? And, how does AI even handle like an emergency? God forbid, what happens, if you fall? Now you're dealing with, you've booked everything yourselves. And this maybe stretches farther than just an AI agent, but like if you were to just book this without a group operator, there is no safety net. Like we kind of are the safety net. Our overseas partners are the safety net. We can provide that assistance. So like you said earlier, someone can just pick up the phone and call us, or they can call them. If you do it on your own, you don't have that net.
Yeah, and that's even one thing we talk about with even just group tours in and of itself is just even the safety of that, of just you get to be with other people, and it's also a lot of that thinking that's just kind of taken out of the framework for you, that you're like, I just get to be with a group. I don't have to schedule this time to be here and do these different things, but I just get to be with my group and I get to enjoy that time rather than thinking through all that schematic of, okay, well, how's the day gonna go?
Yeah, there's no pressure. We take the pressure off of you so that when you're there, when you're in the moment, as a pastor, you can lead your devotionals, or if you're a worship leader, you can sing with your group. We've had people that have brought instruments, whether it be guitars or keyboards or ukuleles. I think I saw in one.
Probably,
You can't do that if you're so focused on, okay, I have to make sure everything goes to my plan. I was supposed to do this. I have to make sure that this is accounted for. We do that. We handle all of that. So literally, even as the pastor, the group leader, you show up. You can read your morning devotional on the bus. You can listen to worship music on your way to your next site. You have time now when you're, say, at the Jordan River to participate and actually baptize your people, your congregation, instead of going, okay, hey, this guy's going to go do it for me. I'm going to step back and I'm going to figure out my schedule with ChatGPT. Because, what if something changes on the fly, like we said earlier with the garden tomb? What if something closes or there's a holiday that...
Or there's traffic. It could be later in the day. People, we were even talking about, hotels being in Tel Aviv, in contrast to being on the coast in Netanya, to where if you fly in, you may have to leave a little earlier in the morning just because you're trying to beat traffic, because people are going to work, they're doing their normal jobs over there, and the group has to get on the road in order to get to Caesarea Maritima early in the morning to start the sightseeing. So a lot of that goes into it for sure.
Yeah, because some of the stuff, like, look, this itinerary on paper, figuratively and literally, is good. But on paper, it doesn't actually work, because that's a perfect example. To get from Tel Aviv to Caesarea Maritima, add one additional hour than what it would be from Netanya, because you can't go through the city. You have to exit the city, so you have to go around to the bypass to then get on the highway to then get to Caesarea Maritima. Whereas if you stay in Netanya, which is knowledge that we've learned, you can shave an entire hour. So instead of having, a 7 a.m. wake-up call, now you have an 8 a.m. wake-up call.
After just getting off a plane for an overseas flight.
And some of them, some get in on a good time. We don't have control over the airlines as much as people think we do. Like, sometimes the plane gets in at like 10, and then it's an hour drive to either Tel Aviv or Netanya. The driving time from the airport is the same either way. It's just, do you want to stay in the right town, or do you want to stay in the town that, this is the one that I've heard of, this is the one that AI recommended? The hotels in Tel Aviv are beautiful. In a lot of ways, most of the time they're nicer than the ones in Netanya. But what is better? Are you paying for the convenience, or are you paying for the one-night stay? It's stuff like that you don't get unless you ask it the right prompt. If you say, if you say, hey, I'm looking for convenience and I'm looking to be, cost effective, not necessarily cheap or budget minded, but like I'm looking to be smart with my money. It doesn't know that unless you tell it to. So I don't know. I feel like I'm very indifferent towards AI when it comes to certain things. I don't think it's a bad tool. I do think that it has a rightful place. I think it can help people. I just don't know that it's to the point where people want to believe it is.
Yeah,
at least not yet.
And even just to trust it with your full travel plan at this point in time. I think it's very early stages. Like we said, it's a tool now. It's kind of in that first stages of, the everyday person using it. And for those that are joining us or you're watching on replay, I think we're all kind of figuring out AI in our own way, just even in home usage, we're just trying to figure out, okay, what is AI and, how do I use it, or what is it good for, or what would it, benefit in my personal life of, whether it be work or travel or anything. And so I think there's a lot that goes into it, but it will always miss that personal touch. It'll always miss that human factor. That will always be the part that can never be replaced. And so it is a tool, but it's also going to always have that little void of it's not a person talking to you or giving input and giving you feedback.
No, I couldn't have said it any better. That is probably the best way to summarize it. I mean, look, I'll go as far as saying I don't even trust Siri for my morning alarm. I used to, when I was in high school, I would be like, hey, Siri, set my alarm for this time. And that was it. And hey, speaking of, sorry, Siri. But, and just, yeah, it did. It knew. It was like, oh, we're going to set an alarm. It's little stuff like that. I don't trust it then. I don't trust it now with certain tasks. And there are people that will hear that statement and they'll be like, wait, so you don't trust AI and Siri to set your alarm for high school, but yet, there are people that trust it to put thousands of dollars worth of an itinerary of a trip of a lifetime, and yeah, they're just willing to take that risk. I'm not saying not to by any means. We're here to help by any means. Even if people don't book a trip with us, I can't tell you how many conversations we've had where someone has said, hey, this is my budget. I know it's not realistic. Can you help me anyways? And we've done it. We've helped missionaries. We've helped schools do things. Obviously, we're a for-profit business ultimately at the end of the day. So,
But the heart behind what we do is we want to see people travel. We want to see people enjoy their sites, enjoy their sightseeing. And so really formatting a trip that's of most interest to you that you're looking for. And this is why we work with our hosts so closely, is because we really want to fashion something that they are excited about, so that when they go to their church or go back to their group or family or school, they have something that's exciting, that and it's also going to be spiritually enriching for them too. That's one of the key things I think is so awesome, is because we get to work with churches and pastors and these hosts that are putting these trips together, is really for people to dive deeper with Jesus and getting to experience, whether it's going to Israel or it's going to one of our new river cruises, to spend time together as a community to really dive deeper in the Word.
And I will say, selfishly speaking, if the day comes and we do get replaced by AI, I am going to kind of miss out on some of those stories that Rick and Amy talked about last week about, just hearing people's lives change. That's something that's really fun about this industry, and being able to operate group travel is, we send groups of people, 50, hundreds, thousands, multiple groups a year. And, I wouldn't get to convey those stories to other people and say, hey, I'm not saying this will happen on your group, but I've seen this happen on other groups, and it was a really good bonding moment. It brought the church together. There have been churches that have gone through hard times, and then they went on these trips and somehow, they made it out for the better. There's churches that have combined because they've met on trips and now they're partners.
Yeah.
I mean,
and they love traveling together. Yeah, exactly.
You're not going to build that partnership if you just book it all yourself. And it just doesn't exist the same. The relationships just aren't there. Maybe that's what I'm harping on, is relationship.
Agreed.
But that's what it is. I mean, AI is it's a solid tool.
Agreed.
But I don't know. I know that we said that we would offer time for a Q&A, but people might get tired of listening to my nasally pollen-infused voice.
It's a real struggle here in Florida right now, being in April.
Yeah, I lost my voice on the phone yesterday. Oh. Yeah, I was just talking, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm saying anymore. I can't hear myself talking, so it's just wild.
I'm just thankful I haven't sneezed this entire time.
I've been holding it back. I have been holding it back desperately. But
all right, well, we want to thank you for joining with us today, and any additional thoughts or anything else that you can share?
The one thing that I'm thinking of, and this is a bold statement, I feel like, but would you actually trust AI to book your travel? Because, I know that's a loaded question. I think we've both given our opinions, but would you, the viewer, whether you're watching this today live or if you're watching this, a in a month from now on YouTube because it popped up in your feed. I don't know. YouTube's weird like that. But would you actually trust AI to do any of this? Would you trust it to write your itinerary? Would you trust it to book your hotels? Can it book hotels yet?
I don't know
if it can.
It might be. If not, it's probably being worked on, I'm sure. You
I
say it
know.
loud enough, it's probably going to happen.
Yeah, it's actually funny, and I'm rabbit trailing. But my wife actually, we called a local restaurant to make a reservation, and there was an option on Google that said "call for me," and so she picked up the phone. She like pressed it, or I don't know why I'm doing this, but she typed on it, and then it texts her and it says how many people are in your party, and she said 4. And next thing you know, she got a text confirmation saying, hey, at this time, on this date, everything was done. And I'm like, that's trippy. So, I mean, it can book a reservation. I don't know.
Very interesting, for sure.
But
Well, if you want to leave us a comment on our YouTube page, Facebook page, wherever you're tuning in today, or if you want to send us an email, our email is sales, S-A-L-E-S, sales at ittworld.com. But yeah, let us know if you have any questions about any of our trips, anything we could be of assistance with, and again, would you use AI
yeah.
to book your trip?
Or if you really miss seeing Tim today, and you can call us at 863-709-9208. And next week, I will be more than happy to put his extension on here so you can call him directly. So anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching.
Thank you, Yen.
If you haven't followed us or subscribed, be sure to do that on the respective platforms. I think Facebook is follow and YouTube is subscribe, but be sure to do that to stay up to date with these kind of quirky videos. So thank y'all.
Thank y'all.